Welcome to Stratazine. This week we have a couple of stories for you, and we're going to start first with our news recap.
Recently, Instagram introduced a controversial change where the quality of videos is tied to their popularity. If a video doesn't get enough user engagement, Instagram automatically downgrades its quality, making it look blurry or less appealing.
If something isn't watched for a long time because the vast majority of views are in the beginning, we will move to a lower quality video, and then if it's watched again a lot, then we will re-render the higher quality video.
This decision has sparked frustration among creators, especially smaller ones, who feel it's unfair and discourages creativity. Critics argue this change prioritizes big influencers while making it harder for new or less popular creators to grow, raising concerns about fairness and Instagram's focus on profits over community. What are your thoughts on the recent changes Instagram has chosen to make?
It's pretty interesting that I don't know, that just seems unfair to smaller creators. Yet another example of Meta not caring about organic growth, personally.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just like the why.
Yeah.
The why is kind of, I guess, unclear to me of what's the purpose of doing that. And does it help them in some way? And it also is another big indicator of like what content is they're deeming good. Like, like if you're like the quality of this is pretty poor, so Instagram doesn't like it.
Yeah.
If it's really high quality, then obviously it's arrived to some degree. And now we're going to kind of push it out to more people. So
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Instagram quality, it's years old, and they've never upgraded the like resolution that you can upgrade photos at. And if you put stuff in too high, they just hit it with a massive compression hammer. It's bad. And so now this video report doesn't surprise me at all either.
Yeah.
But what have we got for our story today?
Yes, so today we'll be talking about teenager Instagram accounts and this kind of restrictions that they're starting to put on that, and we want some of your opinions. This week we are with Jason Reeder, the department chair at BYU Idaho for the communication department, as well as Corey Kerr, and I'm Izzy Hall, and this is Marley Titus.
So within the last month, I'm sure you guys have heard of this, Instagram has come out with restrictions for teen accounts, and they've created accounts specifically for teenagers. And the way that they've decided to do this is by making teens verify their age in a couple of different ways, and these accounts have to be connected to their parents' accounts. So they claim that it'll be really protective for teens under 16. Some of these different restrictions that they have are private accounts, messaging restrictions, sensitive content restrictions, limited interactions, and time limit reminders. These are all great things for teens, but we just wanted to kind of get your insight on what you think about that. Do you think it will work? What kind of changes do you guys foresee happening on social media accounts because of these teen accounts being created?
Well, I think you're going to see a lot more fake Instagram accounts. I think you'll see a lot more, ways to get around the age restrictions and those types of things. Teenagers since time immemorial have been very creative in getting around those types of things. And so I think without massive privacy invasion, you're going to find it extremely difficult to actually apply this.
Yeah, I was trying to read through some of the, the items that you brought up, Marley, and I think one of them that I noticed that was a little bit interesting in particular was, I believe it was the messages. They actually, like, parents can't read the messages, but they can see who they're messaging, and I'm like, I don't know, like I don't know, like, I mean, I don't want to like totally police everything and feel like I'm getting in all the total business, but it is interesting of like all of the things there maybe aren't what they look like or what they seem. You know what I mean? I would like to know what kind of conversations are happening on there. And it seems, so it's like an effort to make down that path, but maybe not fully quite there yet. And the level of transparency that I think parents are looking for in something like that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because like all of this is fairly new. Like Instagram relatively is new within the last 10 years. And Izzy and I have talked a little bit about how like when we were on Instagram at like 12 and 13, like we didn't know about internet safety and or anything like that. And so our parents definitely didn't know.
It wasn't something
About
we were
that.
taught at all.
No, we weren't taught that at all, but it wasn't really a thing yet. So it's just kind of interesting to see how it's changed over time and how these platforms are seeing that there are problems with it, but they're trying to make changes. But I think it does kind of go into parenting a little bit, like what parents want to see from their teens. And I think it's interesting that you brought up that parents can't see like what the messages are, but it also does go into privacy stuff. So it's like kind of where's the line? I don't know. Kind of
One
interesting.
other thought I think too that I've been thinking through is just I don't know, what's the intent? Like why now? It seems a little bit like should have happened a long time ago. And
Right.
so it's kind of like, is this an effort to truly help with privacy and protection and with parents and things like that? Like, is that legit? Or is this an opportunity to get early adopters? Does that make sense? Trying to like get kids, or youth into social media earlier to adopt their platforms and start heading down this path because now it looks like it's a lot more safe. Does that make sense? So is it a marketing mechanism, or is it we genuinely want to like help protect young people in social? And I don't know that that's really clear. That what's the agenda? And maybe there's none. I don't know.
I think you're definitely onto something there, because you've got the early adopters or younger adopters, brand loyalty when people pick stuff up in there as children or as teens. I mean, as we've seen with credit cards, sticks around forever. But I think even a little bit more insidious than that is they're doing this now because now they're feeling the heat.
Yeah.
So only in the last couple of years,
Reactionary more than
yeah, I mean, well,
proactive.
you had Congress pulling Zuckerberg up in front of grieving parents who have lost children due to the negative effects of the platform, and forcing him to apologize to everybody publicly. And that clip is played over and over and over again. I don't think this is them being proactive. They've known that this is, that this has been harmful for a long time. If you go back to the cigarette industry, they had pretty much captured the male market, and to move to a female market, they didn't change anything. They didn't make the cigarettes any less addictive. They didn't make them any less harmful, but they did make them longer and slender and gave them lady names that will attract the ladies. And it's kind of the same thing. It's not like this is going to make
Social
Instagram
safer.
any better from a mental health standpoint, or any along those lines. It may curtail some of the things that like child trafficking and some of those things that they're trying to focus on. But there's so many other things that it doesn't do. It's methadone light. It's still highly addictive. It's still very damaging. And maybe there are a couple guide rails that they've added in some safety features for some of the things that I think are concerning, but not as ubiquitous as everything else. It's kind of like, protecting against, forest fires, but you live in the middle of the desert. It's like, okay, so yeah, you've got forest fire protection, but that's not the significant and most likely problem that you're going to have.
For sure. And I think if we want to get our first graphic up, I think it's interesting to think about where teenagers are on social media and how that's changed over time and what platforms they're using now more than they were. And if we look at that graph, you can really see that change over time and the popularity of YouTube and TikTok and Instagram right now. And so it's worth focusing on what those platforms are doing and what they have to offer children or what they don't have to offer.
Does Snap and TikTok I haven't followed closely on those. Do they have a teen account just like Instagram, or is Instagram kind of leading out on it right now?
I know that
are you aware?
Snapchat does.
Okay.
I don't
TikTok
think-
have anything like that in
I don't
place?
think TikTok
I don't think
does.
so.
I think Instagram is kind of the front runner on this,
Kinda
and I'm
like-
sure that
Mhm.
other platforms will follow like they
Mhm.
usually do with stuff like
Mhm.
this.
YouTube has tried to have YouTube Kids. I don't think anybody cares about it or uses it, but they got hit when I can't remember if it was 96 or 97, but Child Online Protection Act came out, and then nobody enforced it for 10 to 15 years. And then they started enforcing it. YouTube immediately went out and started blaming all the creators for making content that kids would like when they've been promoting that content and making money off of that content the entire time. And then they launched YouTube Kids, and I don't think they cared whether or not it was successful, because it showed, look, we did a thing, and it's the same type of thing where it's like, continue to blame the parents. There are always these platforms that they do some token gesture, and then they say, yeah, we know that our product is extremely harmful and in a lot of cases even deadly to people of certain ages, but it's the parents' fault, and YouTube did it. Does anybody know anyone that uses YouTube Kids? I don't even know if anybody has downloaded that app in the last couple of years.
Only little kids.
Maybe, but yeah. Anyway, so I think teen Instagram accounts might be a similar thing. It's a token gesture to try to get the government off of their back.
Yeah, there was. I wish I should have had like the dates and things, but yeah, YouTube did get slapped with a massive fine. It actually wasn't that long ago. It was probably within the last, I would say, 5 years. And for the very thing that you're talking about is just being kind of not being accused of, but they were found guilty of targeting children, right, with ads and things like that. And it was a hefty fine, and I think it was like 120 million or something like that. But like when you do all the math of what these companies are worth, like it's really not that much. And there was, I remember seeing articles and news stories about it, and kind of people were kind of saying like, this is kind of the cost that they build in. It's the cost of doing business. And then like a year later, so people are like, okay, they've learned their lesson. We find them, we've done our part. And I think it was like a year later in, I think the EU, they got caught doing the exact same thing, like right after that massive lawsuit. And it's like, okay, to me, that's like, I mean, that's your actions speak louder than your words, right? It's like we say we're going to do with this thing and we're going to behave a certain way, but you just got fined this, and then a year later you're doing the same thing somewhere else and you got caught again. And I think they're fine with it. Like again, I think it's part of the cost of doing business. They're making money, and if they're going to get fined a certain amount, they kind of build that into what they're doing, and they're going to keep moving forward. So
it's the same thing at the cost benefit analysis of other product development, where, if your product kills a certain number of children, and you're willing to pay out on the court and legal fees to, make that go away, there's a certain threshold where you're okay with killing a certain number of children. And that's not just social media. You've got cars, you've got planes, you've got everything where it's like the acceptable losses. And if you're rich enough, then those fines from the government are just fees to continue to play the game.
Yeah.
It's so unfortunate that these kids are just getting Band-Aid solutions for problems caused by social media.
Yeah, I was gonna say the big problem is kind of goes back to where we were starting a little bit with just parenting and things like that. It's just, should they even be on there, period? I mean, yes, we've got, they're rolling out these tools to allow, what is it, 13?
13 is the legal age where you can start collecting data on
Yeah.
somebody in the US.
And then, for the teen accounts, I think anyways, but it's just, the bigger question is, should my child be on social media at 13 or before that, or what, and I think those are the bigger discussions outside of all these tools and functions, is just what's the best thing for them and their well-being, and kind of talking through that and figuring that out.
Right.
Because even though these things exist doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. It might be tempting, like, oh, it's safe now and we got these things, but I think it's much bigger than that.
Well, yeah. And I mean, the Tristan's group, the Humane Research, they came out recently with an episode on a child who had ended his life because he fell in love with a chatbot, right? And the argument that they were making is that he had parents that were very aware of internet safety, but not aware of the danger of, the next emerging technology. And so it's kind of like the U.S. is always really prepared for the last war that it fought, but not for the next one. Parents are always going to be that. I mean, as long as the progress of this technology continues to be focused on growth and engagement, both of which equal, trying to addict people to the platform as much as possible. The technology is always going to be outstripping the general zeitgeist, the knowledge that's around to be able to deal with that technology. You guys both mentioned that you were on Instagram at 12 and 13, right?
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
that was close to a decade ago ish,
Mhm.
right? Platform was significantly different back then.
Very.
So, and you mentioned that you didn't have any significant issues or problems. You're well-adjusted adults today,
Mhm.
nothing's really going on. How do you feel about 12 and 13-year-olds being on the platform today?
In hindsight, I think it's kind of crazy that I was given such unlimited access at such a young age. And like I said, I feel like my parents didn't really teach me that like digital citizenship. I had some guidelines like keep a private account on Instagram, don't add people on Snapchat you don't know, like if anything happens, block people. And so I was aware of things like that, but also like the long-term effects of social media, people just didn't know then and still don't really understand. And so those were things that now that I am a little bit more aware of it, like I don't think I would give my kids just unlimited internet access like I had.
I would agree with that. I think 10 years ago, it was a very different platform than it was. Like influencers weren't a thing. Like the blue check mark wasn't a thing. Like I followed my mom and like a couple of my friends and people just posted pictures of what was in front of them.
Only do a square picture.
Yeah, it was just a little square and it was blue, like the logo and stuff. And I just think definitely then, like we just didn't know about things that could go wrong or different internet safety things. But I think now with Instagram and these platforms becoming what it is, I don't think I would let my kids just have unlimited access either. It's scary to even think about.
And so kind of back on the topic of parenting, you said that these platforms can do whatever they want, but it kind of does fall on the parents. What is your guys' opinions on, or I guess just like tell us more about what exactly you think parents are responsible for versus what the platform is responsible for?
I mean, ultimately, parents are responsible for everything, right? I mean, you have the charge of your children, and that's one of the things that, I mean, I don't want the state coming in and telling me what I can and can't do, that's ultimately the goal. But I also think that there are significant market forces that are out of whack, right? And so when you have companies that are allowed to get to the size where they control an entire vertical or entire horizontal of an industry, we decided in the 1920s and 30s that we didn't like the idea of monopolies, and now we have monopolies, duopolies, and monopsonies in almost every sector of society. And our food is poisoned. Our technology is out to get us, and to a certain extent, you can say that the parents should do these types of things, but at some point in time, there's things that are a bigger scale than an individual family can deal with. And so I think parents should make the decision of what they're going to do with their children, and understand the facts. And I don't know if the Surgeon General has come out and said things about social media. And so I don't know if we need a little tag that they put on the cigarettes, but it's not like that really abated anything that did with smoking. But at some point in time, we've got to address that there isn't a competitive marketplace, that these companies have gotten to the point where they're too big. Recently, Google was told that they have to sell Chrome because they have a monopoly in search. And that was this week. And so I think there's a little bit of both. There's always going to be responsibility on the parents to parent your children, right? That's always going to be a thing. But there are certain things that are so far outside of my control as a dad. You know, I can't do anything about foreign wars. I can't do anything about companies that are so big that they can pay millions or billions of dollars in fines, and it really is just a fee to do business. You know, if you're so large that that there's no real pressure to do the right thing, then you get the situation that we've got right now, which is bigger than an individual household, and bigger than, you know, a parent or two parents can handle.
Yeah, I don't even know where to begin. Like, they're just like, I mean, there's lots of things with this just to kind of to think about and to get into. I mean, there's all the way from, you know, I've seen, like, so my oldest is 14, just turned 14. So this is kind of starting to wade into this territory, right? And figuring out how to navigate it ourselves. But, you know, I see, you know, youth in groups, and sometimes I see, you know, youth that have almost like disconnected themselves from the present, from actually what's going on. And they're more worried about trying to document and post something about what they're experiencing right then versus just being in the moment. You know what I mean? And just the pressures of that, and just, it just gets weird, you know. And it's like, I want you, like, and I want from my daughter and my kids, you know, to, like, you just need to be there, like, be present, like, and versus kind of removing yourself from this thing and trying to feel like you've got this pressure to do this or to keep up here, put out a certain facade of something that's taking place in your life. Just be authentic and be you, and you don't need to worry about the pressures that are going on over here. At the same time, they feel very real pressures to feel like they're connecting with their friends in their age group and their youth, because everybody else has it, but not them. And so it's this, do they feel alienated and disconnected as well? And then trying to figure out how to navigate that and kind of counsel and walk them through that. There's all the way to, you know, I think there's just, everybody's got to figure it out for themselves. I think you have to watch your families, your kids, you know, like my daughter, again, we got her a Gab phone, you know. I think it's along the similar lines, meaning, you know, she had a phone that, and we tried to do all these little, going back to the craftiness of youth, right? We tried to lock down different things here and there, but there was always a way. Not that she was getting in anything like super inappropriate or crazy, but it was just like, it would suck her in, and she'd get into like things that we didn't want her to be in, and into YouTube shorts or doom scrolling on the different things, or just looking up things on the internet. And it's like, so we had to like completely get rid of the device, and we got like a Gab phone and just even more locked down. And that seems to be working well for us. And it's funny, I think it's working well for us because she's tried to find her old phone and try to like use that instead of the current one, because I think it's done exactly what we wanted to do. Good. And but, you know, because she just doesn't have the ability right now to throttle herself, like self-control. It's like, it's hard for a young person to try to like control their time and their thinking and the use of it, and they just struggle with that. And so it's I don't know, there's a lot, there's a lot of things here. We could probably talk forever, but you just got to be careful and know your kids, and be aware of what's happening in this world, and trying to protect them. It's my job to protect my kids, like, you know, I think, or at least do everything that I possibly can. And from there, they're going to figure it out, and they're going to find some things, and I can't totally shelter them, but I'm going to do my best in places where I feel like it's harmful.
No, I really appreciate that perspective from parents. I feel like learning time management and that self-control, like you were saying, at 14 is hard enough without a device in your hands, for sure.
Absolutely.
Just before we wrap up really quick, we wanted to kind of switch it to kind of the other side, like where you guys think the ethical line of these companies targeting kids on social media is. So that has been around for a long time. Like, we've had infomercials on TV, and we've had magazines that are targeted towards kids. And now we have social media things that are targeted towards them. So just to kind of switch away from the parent side and more toward the social media practitioner side, like, where do you guys think that line is between going too far in targeting kids?
I don't know. I think
It's kind of a hard question.
it is. I mean, I think a lot of it for me probably comes down to data collection. You know, what kind of information are they collecting about, you know, a child? To your point, I mean, there were commercials when I grew up as a kid, you know, like the 80s about Hot Wheels. And I mean, they're clearly targeting me because then I'm going to go tell my parents what I want for Christmas, or I want this really cool toy, right? So like, that's not going to go away. And I don't really think I really have a problem with that personally, but I think I think there is a layer where that could probably go over the top, where it can maybe become too manipulative, if you will. But I also think maybe more than anything now, those are TV ads. You know what I mean? Like now there's so much tracking in place and data that's being collected that it's like, and that's where, again, going back to the YouTube thing, that's where they got in trouble. You know, yes, it was ads, but it was more about the data collection behind the ads that would then retarget them and things like that. And that's where it's like, okay, I think that's where we're kind of getting into a messy, difficult area. It's a data privacy.
I think data privacy is huge, and that's something I've been concerned about for a long time. We've had laws on the books for 20 or 30 years on data privacy. It hasn't seemed to help. They didn't enforce them for a significant amount of time, and now there's some kind of weak, perfunctory sort of enforcement that's trying to happen. But I think the biggest thing is the difference between the types of media that we're dealing with now. You know, I mean, if you read Zuboff's book, Surveillance Capitalism, she uses the term unprecedented a billion times. But the idea is that the only thing that we can do is compare it to our past experience. And so it makes perfect sense to try to compare it to the radio and try to compare it to television and, you know, and early banner ads in the 90s and early 2000s and things. But in actuality, there's nothing that it compares to. There's nothing that has ever been so ubiquitous and so harmful. And so I would say that the line is, I don't think children should be on any social media platform until they are adults. And that's a hard stance, and that's a tough one to go with. But when you see what it does, and we're starting to see this, I don't even think we fully understand what's going on, but the empty dopamine hits that everybody's getting, that you're retraining people's brains as their brains are developing to be addicted to these platforms, to not be experiential and present in the moment. You know, Jason pointed out watching kids and teens get together. And I remember there was a birthday party that my daughter was having a number of years ago. And there was a girl that was just like, everybody was playing, and they were, you know, we kind of rented out this gym, and they were kicking the ball around and playing all these games. There's this girl on her phone that like literally never looked up from her phone, and she was with all of her friends and she was doing all these, and it's like, she was an early adopter of that type of technology. But what happens when everybody is doing that? I think we run into some significant issues as a society, and some significant issues as individuals in our families. And so I personally think that any targeted situation towards people under the age of 18 is unethical, and I think we should have a huge problem with it. And if you look at, you know, if you want the foxes to be the regulators of the hen house, you're always going to have problems. You know, you're not going to ask the people that are causing the problem and benefit from more of that problem coming out to be the ones to self-regulate. You know, I don't go and ask drug dealers to like make sure that they're only dealing drugs ethically. You know, we have laws and law enforcement that comes into play because it's to their financial advantage to get that out to as many people as possible, and probably as young as possible. Advantaged people that are going out there, and the people that have the least ability to make those types of decisions, are prime customers for those types of predatory environments. And I think that's not an inaccurate kind of analysis to give of the social media space right now. It is to their benefit that they destroy people's lives. There's a financial incentive, and people will always tend towards incentives. I don't think that makes individuals in those companies evil, But when you have growth and you have engagement as your two metrics, those aren't moral. They're not immoral, but they're amoral. They're without morals. They're just two numbers of a thing. It's kind of like optimizing for efficiency. If we do efficiency in everything, well, this thing is really efficient. Well, so is child labor and slavery. But like at a certain point as a society, we have to say, like, some of these metrics need to have some sort of legal and moral and ethical discussions and guardrails put around them, and not from the people that are doing it, but from the people that should be protecting us against the people that are doing it. And so I don't think any of these efforts from any of these social media platforms are ever going to be effective, because they have no incentive to be effective, because they can continue to pay these fines or these fees and continue to do business. And as long as the acceptable losses are below a certain profitability, they will continue to do those things. And they might do whatever they think will make them look good. But until there's some significant changes in the environment that surrounds them, then we're always going to have issues with that.
Yeah, I think going back to what I was kind of saying, I think, the moment that there's another firestorm with, Instagram or social, what are they going to do? They're going to be like, well, look what we've done. Look at the effort we made with the teen thing. You know what I mean? That they have to almost do things like that. They're almost obligated to show that they're making an effort versus looking like they're doing nothing at all. And so whether it's effective or not, they probably don't really care, but it does outwardly look like they're making some kind of stride or effort into it to kind of get people off their back.
That's true.
Well, we thank you guys for being here.
You're
Thanks
welcome.
for this discussion. It was really insightful to me, and I'm sure it was to Izzy as well.
Yes.
And
Good.
yeah.
Well, we've got one more news recap coming up here.
How much are you willing to spend on your favorite TikTok creators? Somali TikTok battles take place on TikTok Live.
Two influencers from different clans battle by encouraging their followers to send them gifts, which cause effects to happen during the TikTok Live. TikTok gifts include a universe, which cost $562 to send an animation to go on the live.
These battles are motivated by clan rivalry, which spans back hundreds of years. These TikTok battles are the latest form of rivalry, with some of these battles being planned months in advance.
Many people are worried the games are also contributing to a toxic online environment. TikTok has told us that live content must abide by the community guidelines, which apply across the platform, says the BBC. The battles can be pretty addictive, with one participant claiming she spent $7,000, her college tuition, on supporting her clan in the battles.
Platforms like Twitch and YouTube have supported live streams for years, and some influencers make thousands of dollars during their streams.
Streamers like Ninja or Tim the Tatman, on top of receiving ad revenue while streaming, have subscribers who donate hundreds of dollars at times.
So what do you think? Is supporting your favorite content creators worth your time and money? Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, I mean, that's another really interesting story that kind of goes along with what we're talking about. Like that story is fascinating because there's a cultural element that I wasn't aware of, but there are these tribes, and they use these battles. Politicians are mentioning like who's winning in these types of donate battles and things, on which tribe they're coming from, those types of things. It's really interesting, the way that that's happening. But yet again, I would be very interested to see who the ages of the types of people that are doing that. I mean, you have somebody that spent her college
$7,000
tuition,
or something.
right?
It's mind blowing.
And so obviously we don't let people of certain ages gamble, and so yet another situation where you're seeing the technology outstrip kind of the cultural norms, and in an interesting way, if not harmful. So
That'd be nice to go back to that student and just be like, tell us like what happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I would love
Right.
to just kind of like pick that person's brain and be like, why? Like, and how do you feel about it right now?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what was going on? What caused that to happen? Why did you do that? How do you feel about it right now?
Mhm.
It'd be really like, I just love to speak with that person,
Yeah.
learn more about that whole experience and what how that happened.
I mean, if you have a parasocial relationship with an influencer, and then they start calling you out by name, like that's reciprocation that you don't normally get in parasocial, right? And so that's going to be a very addictive behavior for somebody whose brain isn't fully developed as well. And I don't know how old she is, but anybody
Sure.
under the age of 25 is going to be experiencing,
Yeah.
continuing brain development. And so, that's a reciprocal situation, and you see it a lot on Twitch and not just TikTok as well, but Mixer, which is dead now, but it's fascinating. So anyway, so that's our show for today. Thanks for joining us, and we will catch you guys next week.